On today's episode of the DeRaud-Messinger Show, we're talking Texas and Oklahoma, Dylan. We got a couple questions to ask, of course, to each other and try to gain some sort of knowledge in between of us. Of course, this is part of our HornSports Longhorns coverage. Don't forget to check us out at hornsports.com for all things Texas. Now, Dylan, of course, there are many question marks heading into this game, especially with the sizable difference in last year's game, which almost makes it more difficult to try to predict. The obvious question, though, Dylan, is the glaring hole at Oklahoma last season, which was that quarterback position. Of course, Dylan Gabriel was injured and did not play, and now he's back. And last year, Dylan, I had to write it down just to make sure I wasn't kidding myself. Davis Bevel started last year. I'm sure Texas fans remember that name with great admiration. Bevel threw just 38 yards and an interception. Of course, Gabriel was their guy and missed that game with an injury, like I said, and Gabriel is back this season. Dylan, how concerned should Texas be about Gabriel, knowing that the Oklahoma quarterback is probably, at least to this point in the season, going to be the best quarterback Texas has faced so far?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to just being worried, more just like again, like you're saying, like you haven't seen it, right? Like you had Milrow, he's got his wheels, but the arm talent isn't necessarily there. You thought you were gonna have something of a test with Jalen Daniels. He re-aggravates his back like 30 minutes before the game earlier today. So you haven't really gotten that sample, right? I guess the closest thing that you would have right now is Milrow.
Is
So
Milrow. And like you were talking about the
yeah,
Kansas Jalen Daniels, I mean, if you're Sarkeesian and Coach Kwiatkowski, that's probably almost upsetting is that this was going to be a good, at least theoretically, tune up is kind of a disrespectful word to use
yeah,
against Kansas, but it was going to be an opportunity to see the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, at least voted in the preseason, in action. And then,
yeah.
of course, that didn't end up happening. But anything else about Gabriel? I mean, it's going to be tough. Yet again, Texas hasn't ever seen Gabriel in action. And
Mm.
the Oklahoma Texas game, Dylan, just historically, I'm sure both fan bases know. And if not, where have you guys been? It's up and down. You expect one thing and you don't get it. And sometimes you expect it and it just, Dylan happens. But I guess that's football. Gabriel, how are you feeling?
Well, again, like when it comes to just how he plays football, he's shifty. He's a good runner. He can make defenders pay. Matchup to watch will be him against the linebacking core, especially Jalen Ford. We've got your feral animal in a cage, Devon, of Anthony Hill. Um, how is he going to be utilized against Gabriel? I worry a little bit because Gabriel can make you miss. So you've run at him in a straight line, he can get going the other way and you're just going to be tackling air, right? So there's that to kind of be zeroed in on in this matchup. And plus, like Texas fans, if they watch Oklahoma games, they might already think of Gabriel a certain way, but they have not necessarily faced him yet. He likes to talk a little bit of crap, Devin. He gets into it. He's fiery, right? I was just watching Iowa State before this. Scores a touchdown as he's celebrating. He's bumping into an Iowa State defender to make it known like what he's doing, right? So he's a guy that does not get down on himself in the sense of he's going to have confidence the entire time. And you can respect it as much as you want, but watching it on the field, when he's burning you and making the right plays, it's going to test your patience a little bit, and it's going to make you wonder kind of what's going on with the defense, right? Because they're going to have to focus in on the running game of Oklahoma, but also, again, Dylan Brooks can beat you with his arm and his legs. He's the best quarterback that they're going to face probably this year until they get to, let's say, the college football playoff if they happen to make it, right? But like within the Big 12, Dylan Gabriel,
Yeah,
he's doing really well for himself.
I mean, like you said, he isn't not fast, and he's gotten to show it at Oklahoma. Of course, a little bit more opportunity for him to use his legs, just with what Oklahoma was presented with. Excuse me, last year doing this year, not needing it as much. He still has wheels, but like Dylan was also alluding to, I'm more concerned about the Texas linebackers and secondary, especially that secondary. But I'll probably get a little more into my tiers in that aspect in a second. Dylan, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah. Yeah, again, what position group for Texas are you most worried about? Because we've seen you've hinted at before you're worried about that secondary. Is that the one that you think is going to be the most tested in this matchup against Oklahoma, or could it be somebody else?
I mean, it could always be someone else, Dylan. That's like we were saying.
Well, thank you.
You never really know with these games. But I would have to say the secondary for Texas, at least in terms of Longhorns, focus here. The
Yeah.
secondary allowed some big plays against Alabama, which doesn't, I guess isn't out of the norm, Dylan. If you're playing Alabama, you do expect to give up some big plays, but against Alabama, then Baylor, they gave up some deep passes. And then Kansas, Jason Bean took him deep, I think 58 yards, Dylan, on a miscue.
Yeah.
If you're doing that against Oklahoma, it's not going to end up as pretty, Dylan. If you're not going to, what was it, 49-0 last year? You're not going to end up at 49-0 again, especially with
No.
someone that's actually able, no disrespect, actually able to pass the football for the Sooners. It's going to be a completely different game. The extent of how different, though, of course, depends on Saturday's matchup. Yeah, overall, just secondary. Would you agree with me, or are you going to fight me on this one?
Well, so I'm not going to find that is definitely something that I'm concerned with. What we have seen this year is the pressure of the front seven for Texas has really helped kind of maybe take some of the light off of the secondary a little bit. Like there are instances if the
Oh,
quarterbacks had
they
a little bit more time in the pocket, the secondary could be torched. Gabriel is not somebody that I think is necessarily going to be as rattled by the pressure of Texas, right? Like this game plan should still be to get to him, contain him, do not let him get to the outside and scramble. But also, like he is not afraid to get hit in that pocket and deliver some throws, right? And they got talented receivers, especially with Farouk, right? So there's some things you got to be worried about, especially if Gabriel either A has time or B just is not phased by the pressure of Texas's defense.
And speaking, Dylan, of facing that pressure, do you think Quinn Ewers can replicate what he did last year? Of course, he did throw an interception,
Mm.
but with the interception came 4 passing touchdowns and throwing for 289 yards. This season so far, Dylan, overall, you got to say it's pretty decent. Of course, there are
Yeah.
some games where you wish there was more accuracy at times, but overall, one interception coming most recently to Kansas. Otherwise, he's been clean there. How do you feel about Ewers heading into this game? We do know he has a tendency to, play well in the bright light scenarios, even
Yeah.
if it's a 11 a.m. Kick. I guess the lights aren't too bright on that one, but how do you feel?
I mean, the opportunities are going to be there, right? Oklahoma is better than they were last year, especially defensively, right? The team, they were young last year on defense. They got a whole offseason to get coached up by Brent Venables, right? Who's a defensive minded head coach. They're going to be ready for this. And again, they're about average. I think they're about 60th in college football reference when it comes to passing yards allowed, right? So they're about halfway. But so yours is going to have his chances. And if anything, especially after this game by Jonathan Brooks, in which he ran over 200 yards against Kansas, they're going to be almost zeroing in on the run, and they're going to force Ewers to have to beat them. So the opportunities are going to be there. It's more, is he going to be on and be hitting those deep ball throws, which he kind of struggled with during the Kansas game, or is he just going to be clicking on all cylinders like you saw against Alabama, right? So it's kind of what version of Ewers you're going to get. He's going to have all the time in the world. It feels like with the offensive line playing the way it is, um, again, like I was talking about, he's going to have the opportunities, and they've got the talent to do it. It's just going to be how that's not even he's going to be wired in this game, but is just things happening for him, right? Is luck on Texas's side because the ball could totally bounce the other way, right? You could have multitude of things happen, like a tipped ball that gets intercepted, and those are the things that'll really get Oklahoma into this game. Because again, the thing that Oklahoma should be really focusing on this one is those turnovers and forcing Ewers to make those turnovers, right? So again, it's going to be on Ewers to kind of take what the defense gives him and just plod away down the field.
One interesting point, Dylan, that we haven't mentioned yet is that, of course, Jatavian Sanders exited Kansas's
Yeah.
matchup on Saturday. He
And
did.
he's helpful to have on your offense.
He
So
is quite helpful to have on your offense. I believe I can double check, but I think he caught 2 touchdown passes last season in the Red River game, and he is that difference maker. It's hard to match up with a guy like Jatavian who runs like a receiver at tight end, and of course, has all the size in the world. If he is out or on a snap count almost, it's going to be a little bit tougher for Texas to utilize some of their differences there. And we talked about it in the reaction to the Kansas game. Maybe Jordan Whittington has to be utilized a little bit more, Dylan. Maybe that is
Is
when
this a
he
legacy game? Is this a Whittington legacy game?
might be a who knows? I mean, just
Yeah.
given the amount of defensive presence that's going to be on Worthy and AD, Whittington might have to be that guy that steps up and puts up some numbers to try to beat Oklahoma on Saturday. But also, along with Sanders, Dylan, Ryan Watts, we were talking about the defensive backs a couple minutes ago. If Ryan Watts is also injured for Oklahoma, yet again, I'm sure early in the week we'll have some updates as to the health status of those guys. But if Watts is also injured, it's going to be tough for Texas, especially with Watts being one of the premier cornerbacks for those Longhorns, to try to defend Dylan Gabriel on the deep ball. Yet again, I see you smirking over there, but yet again, it's really been a deep pass, Dylan, that's hurt the Texas defense. I mean, otherwise, the defensive front, as you were talking about, I think you said earlier, it's kind of a wait and see. I know Kansas played quite well, but nothing too crazy. Not a Texas-like performance there, but still, if you could boil it down, it's got to be the secondary. But Dylan, do you have any other questions for me?
Yeah, so Devin, put your head coaching cap on or your Belichick hoodie here. But if you're Steve Sarkisian, how do you game a plan against this Oklahoma defense?
Yeah, isn't that the $1 million question, Dylan? That's one that I'm
Yeah,
gonna leave to Sark, right? That's making $5.5 million a year or whatever. But no, jokes aside, I mean, kind of like what we're talking about, Dylan. You got to stick to your strengths. So far this season, it has been Jonathan Brooks on the ground and also Quinn Ewers. However, the little point of pause there is for emphasis. The key to Ewers, though, is keeping him clean, in the pocket, of course. That's on the O-line to do. You can't necessarily plan for that. But also being smart with the play calls and calling some things to get Ewers in rhythm early, but then also not doing anything too crazy for him. When he stays out of the turnover trouble, things are good. Like you're saying, a key for Oklahoma is going to be trying to create those turnovers. Don't give him anything too complicated. Sark was saying Quinn's at his best when, of course, he's prepped, but then on game time, he's just loose and ready to go. Just whatever you got to do to keep him loose before the game, Dylan. Give him a little bit of massage. Texas got some athletic trainers. Oh, whoa. No eyes over there.
Where are we going with this?
A
Where
little
are we going with
massage,
this?
roll, just, I don't know, whatever Quinn's got to do to get loose, Dylan. Just when he's tense, you can almost see it from the TV perspective.
Well, on the flip side, though, with Oklahoma, they're going to want him to be tense, right? And I'm curious to see how they're going to handle that in
On
the
the
sense of, are they
defensive
going to
side.
be doing a lot of on the defensive side? Are they going to be doing man? Are they going to be sending extra guys in order to, again, in your case, even no matter if he got a massage before the game, they're going to try to get him a little rattled in the pocket, make him feel the ground a little bit, maybe puts a little extra English onto it,
Well,
right, too,
they're
when
going
they're
to
bringing
make
him
him want
down.
another massage after the game just from a beating.
Exactly.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
but Quinn, oh boy,
Do you know any
we
good
lost
massage
Dylan
places?
again.
No, this is on you now.
No parlors going on, Dylan. But yeah, Quinn, he's got to stay free from the turnover column. Just make the smart throws like we talked about without Jatavian, possibly, yet again. Still too early to tell. The fact that Jatavian looked like he was trying to come back into the game and they said no is an
I think he's going to be there. We got no sources telling us that he's going to play, but just
No,
vibes wise, Devin, I think he's going to want to play and he'll be
I'd
in there.
assume that he's playing, even if he's a little bit banged up. Yet again, like utilizing those one-on-one matchups, getting Jonathan Brooks a nice dose of carries too, and like you were alluding to in the Kansas game, sometimes the coaching also is the part that needs to be looked at a little bit more, Dylan. You can't be having any kind of silly business going on with play calls. I know they had a funny trick play, I think, right before the half against Kansas, and then did not really pan out too well. But Texas, and utilizing really, Dylan, the main key and something to actually talk about versus massaging is is Jordan Whittington, like we talked about, Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, and Jatavian Sanders. Sark has preached about it in pretty much every press conference. At a certain point, we're going to have to mute that word from him because he's got to talk about something else. But the team has been versatile, and that's what he's been preaching on. if you're Texas, spread the wealth. Dylan, that's when Texas is at
Yeah.
their best. When Worthy, for example, Worthy is not being talked about at all in the Kansas game, but Worthy also had, I believe, about 90 receiving yards, and I want to say it was 7 catches. So a decent game from him, but you didn't hear about him because everyone wants to talk about the star of the game. Texas at their best when they spread the wealth, get Jatavian involved, Whittington, AD, Xavier, just
Think we'll see more than one reception for Jonte Cook in this one? Like for Texas, they're going to want to try to implement stuff that Oklahoma's not seeing on tape, right? And Jonte Cook is somebody that you've seen come in at times, but hasn't necessarily been utilized other than maybe like a slant route that you saw the reception against Kansas. But he's got the speed. Plus, they like to line up Keelan Robinson. I don't know if people have noticed it, but him on the field, but he'll go into motion off to the side of the field. But you haven't really seen him get a ton of action, A, in the passing game, or B, coming across maybe on like a misdirection run play or something, right? So those are two guys that I would almost key in on and possibly having a big play, right? Whether that's like a flea flicker that they get to cook deep, right? Stuff like that we have not seen them implement, but you've seen them bring them into games. And a lot of times with Sark, they were talking about on the broadcast too, but there's mind games that are involved, right? You almost want to convince the defense that you're going to do something on the tape, right? When the coaches are watching it, and then do something different, right? So if maybe you see Cook always doing the sweeping motion and in motion, or Keelan Robinson, maybe them not doing that and getting the ball to them out in space, right? So like different ways to get creative. I know Sark is going to be hitting the books here this week because he's going to want something like that because he
well,
loves his trick plays.
if you're a student at the 40 acres, you might see Sark in the PCL this weekend, Dylan.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
might be studying up, pulling out some 500-year textbooks that they got shelved. But no, you make a good point. This, I mean, it's of course the kind of the unsaid truth about the Red River game is whatever play calls you got way deep in the bottom of your play sheet that have been collecting dust because they just haven't been touched are because they've been held for this game. Jonte Cook, that is an interesting call out. He is kind of like I wouldn't say less experienced because this is going to be a comparison to the defensive side of the ball, but he is pretty much this class's Anthony Hill of the offense, Dylan.
Yeah.
Of course, Anthony Hill is in a position of need, so he's gotten more playing time. But Jonte, when he's been on the field, has been productive. And even in the Alabama game, when the deep rainbow pass was going to Xavier Worthy, Jonte, in part, demands some special attention from the secondary just with his big play ability. So it is something to watch out for. But yet again, Dylan, yes, keep Quinn loose. I don't know how we want to go about it. If he likes Taco Bell, I don't know, get him some Taco Bell. Nothing Chick-fil-A related.
Just got off the Chick-fil-A diet, though.
No,
You want him
no
on the Taco Bell diet?
No Chick-fil-A for this week's video. But, I don't know. Whatever you got to do, get him loose. Listen to some country in the locker room. I don't know. Whatever playlist he likes. That's the Quinn Ewers Texas needs, Dylan. This weekend against Oklahoma, but it's bound to be a great game.
The X factors going into this game.
That's my X factor. Quinn Ewers playlist. Yeah. Is he on aux or is he not? But more importantly than our thoughts and questions, how are you feeling about this Oklahoma Texas matchup? Are you excited? If you're not, I'm gonna have to give you a pulse check, my friends. Check us out at HornSports.com, and as always, don't forget to have a great rest of your day.